Many associations get bogged down about what to include and not to include in their minutes. While meeting minutes are an important document, they need to be minutes, not hours. Hi, my name is Susan Leahy and I'm from RobertsRulesMadeSimple.com. In today's video, brought to you by NAP, the National Association of Parliamentarians, I'll be interviewing Kay Cruz, professional registered parliamentarian, all about how to make your meeting minutes more manageable. All right, so Kay Cruz, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, well, welcome. I'm so excited to be talking to you in today's video all about how minutes should not take hours. What a great idea. Where did this concept come from?
Well, I was just thinking about minutes and the fact that minutes should be brief and they should just record what was done and not what was said. And was talking to a friend and popped out with minutes shouldn't take hours, and there you go, a concept was born.
Well, and I think it's such an important concept because I've seen so many organizations where the recording officer takes so much time in preparing them, and then organizations take so much time in approving them that it feels like minutes become probably one of the bigger issues that organizations are dealing with. But really, can you first talk to us about, well, what are minutes, and then how quickly should organizations be able to handle them?
Well, minutes, they're very important because they're the official record of the meeting, and they can be used by auditors and by the courts if necessary, but they also help keep those who are absent informed of what's going on with meetings and remind those who are present of what's taken, of the actions that you've taken.
You know, and they really are that historical perspective, right? They really provide the history.
They are your organization's history, but they're not the in-depth, unabridged history. Right? They're the brief history. And then you should also maintain copies of committee reports and so forth in other places to keep that in-depth history.
There you go. So I like that. So the committee reports can be supplements to the minutes.
Correct. They're not a part of the minutes, but they can certainly be filed and be maintained and should be maintained as part of the history of the organization.
Right. And what popped into my head as you were talking is that so many times your minutes should not be a novel.
Absolutely not. Minutes should be very brief.
So let's talk a little bit about minutes. And I know that sometimes when a recording secretary or officer walks into the meeting, they can feel overwhelmed. What do you do to support them in really being able to transcribe great minutes but not feel so much pressure during the meeting?
Well, the first thing is never use the word transcribe. Minutes are not what was said. They are what was done. And so my best tip is that I get the agenda before the meeting ever starts. It's usually sent out a day or two ahead. And I write the minutes from the agenda without ever thinking about what's going to be said at that meeting, but just assuming that everything on that agenda actually happens. Wow. And then I take my laptop to the meeting and edit the document as we sit there going through the meeting, making changes, noting who's moving what motions and so forth. But at the end of the meeting, the minutes are largely complete. I don't have to take them home and think about them and struggle with them over the next 2 or 3 days. I can usually give them to my minute proofreaders within 15 or 20 minutes after the end of the meeting.
Kay, I think that's so refreshing to really get people to think about the fact that the agenda can be the script for the minutes and that you can walk in and have most of your work done even before the meeting starts.
Absolutely. I've been doing it that way for a long time, and it's very effective.
Wow, really powerful. Now, I have a question, and this is kind of a little off topic, but a lot of clients that will call me will talk and they'll ask the question, Susan, what do you think about recording our meetings so that we can take our minutes after the meeting's over?
There are times when recording meetings is an appropriate tool. I try very hard not to do that because that sucks you into the trap of taking transcription and thinking that you've got to write down what everybody said. And that's not the purpose of minutes.
Right, right. Well, and I'm like, I'm sitting here as you're talking about it, I'm like, God, I'm thinking, do I really want to sit through that meeting a second time?
Exactly right. Most of us don't have time to attend all the meetings that we're scheduled for anyway. Having to sit through them a second time to write the minutes is just a real loser proposition.
Wow. So then what goes into the minutes? If I was to kind of walk in, and what am I recording as the secretary?
Minutes are broken down into 3 sections. There's the first paragraph, and that first paragraph usually lists the type of minutes, the name of the group, the date and time of the meeting, the location of the meeting, the fact that the president and secretary are present, and how the minutes of the previous meeting were disposed of. That sounds like a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
I mean, it sounds like a big overview, but it kind of all sounds canned, so you could really have it prepared, like you said.
Exactly. And in fact, you can do it in 2 sentences. Listen to this. The regular meeting of the Texas Association of Parliamentary Experts was called to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, March 15th, 2013 at the Coffee Cafe. Keith Wilson, President, and Pam Neal, Secretary, were present. The minutes of the January 12th, 2013 meeting were approved as corrected.
Boom. I love it.
2 or 3 very short sentences, and we've covered everything we need to establish that this organization held a meeting.
And so that's paragraph number 1, which sounds like it's kind of like setting the stage, right? So what's number 2?
After that, you're going to have your body paragraphs. Okay. And your body paragraph is going to be a separate paragraph for each subject listed. So the maker of the motion, you want to include all the main motions that are made. Main motions introduce substantial business to your organization. Okay. But secondary motions, things like amendments and so forth, you only have to put down if they're needed for clarity. If you postpone something till later in the same meeting, that doesn't even go in the minutes at all. So there's a lot of things that you don't need to put down, right? Wow. So you don't need to put in withdrawn motions because you didn't do anything with them.
So really what we're trying to record are only those motions that impact business decisions.
That's correct. That's exactly correct.
And that's what really resides in the body of the minutes?
That's correct.
All right. So that's interesting. I think it's fascinating that it's not every single motion. It's about the motions that impact the direction that business goes. So the first one's setting the stage. The second piece is the body. And what's the final piece of the minutes?
The last paragraph is simply what time the meeting was adjourned. And then it's signed by the person who writes the minutes. We used to say that minutes were respectfully submitted. We no longer say that. It's kind of considered old-fashioned. Mm-hmm. And then when the minutes are approved, then we, if we're using paper minutes, we write approved on the piece of paper followed by initials.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about how to approve your minutes in the meeting. Because you can actually do that a couple ways, right? So you can actually make a formal motion. But what I'd like to highlight is general consent, just kind of a consent. How do you do that?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. You're right. And general consent is one of the very easiest ones. After everyone has heard the minutes, and that can either be read at the next meeting or they can be distributed in a draft format prior to the meeting, either electronically or at the door as people arrive at the meeting, then the president, after calling the meeting to order and doing whatever opening ceremonies, can simply say, "You've all seen a copy of the minutes of the prior meeting. Are there any corrections?" And then if there are any, people can mention them. If there aren't any, then the president simply says, "Hearing no objection or hearing no corrections, the minutes are approved."
Oh, that easy. And I think that that's what's so important, Kay, is that, minutes should not take hours. They shouldn't take hours in writing them, and they shouldn't take hours in approving them. Now, as we finish up today, I want you to just share, how long have you been a member of NAP?
I've been a member of NAP for 15 years.
All right, that's it. So now let me ask you a question real quickly about Minutes and NAP and some of the services that this organization has to offer. How would you suggest listeners kind of get involved or reach out to NAP?
Well, one of the nice things that NAP has are some great online courses. And one of the online courses is called Minutes Made Easy. Mm-hmm. It's not very expensive, and it's online course content that you can go through and learn a great deal more about minutes, including the content, and see some actual examples that I think that your listeners will appreciate.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you, Kay, thank you so much for really talking about this very important subject. I hear a lot of people, a lot of meetings are always wondering, well, how do we do our minutes? How do we do them efficiently? And I think you really spent some quality time shedding some light on this very, well, it should be easy topic. So how do we make our minutes not take hours? So thank you so much, Kay, and please go to the NAP website to learn more about how you can learn about how to do Minutes Made Easy. Thanks so much, Kay, and thanks for listening.